Recording. Well, I'm so excited to be here with a brand new amazing guest. I've got Dawn Chubai from the beautiful Vancouver. She has done a lot of really super amazing stuff in the media and been an entrepreneur, and she's been on broadcast, amazing television. She's done a lot of things from, if everyone remembers, maybe the breakfast television and the shopping channel, and from Vancouver to Toronto and back again, and bringing all kinds of fun, playful energy, a lot of experience in storytelling, in sharing her expertise in communication, and but doing that in a really raw, amazing, fun, authentic way. And she's now got her own platform where she's teaching people how to sell, whether it's products or it's an entrepreneur or you have retreats or a home-based business, and really teaching people how to share their story and be that really raw, vulnerable, authentic person. So I know there's much more to the story, but I would love to invite Dawn just to share with all of us a bit more details and kind of your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks,
Welcome.
Raya. Thanks,
Yeah,
Raya. I'm so
yeah,
excited to be here. This is
yeah.
great. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I were to just take it back to when I first started, I guess, being recognized, and by that I mean like a person that puts themselves out there, it really started in the backyard. And with mom hosting the backyard concerts and little Dawn putting together, my band, which really comprised of my sister and our neighbor friends who were they had kids all the same age as us, and doing those backyard concerts. And so I was never afraid to be on the stage per se, or now, of course, for the last 25 years in front of the camera, which is actually kind of surprising because I was always shy in school. But it was one of those things that I was just always naturally able to do. So fast forward into how that translates into a career. Yeah, 25 years in television. And that's combined again from my time on breakfast television, but also in the world of TV home shopping. And one of, I think, my superpowers or personal genius, if you like to use that term, is that I've always made people feel comfortable in that space as well. Often live, sometimes with mere moments of a pep talk or a few tips and tricks. And so now I've kind of taken all of those things that I've been able to do organically and create a program that helps entrepreneurs and brands sell their products, but even selling themselves. I mean, even as a media trainer, helping people tell their story through the camera in a way that feels very connected, which I think, Raya, we can all agree in this connected space, especially at, our age, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
it never ever probably felt very natural for a lot of people. But the new generation, this is where they're born. They're born in the digital age. So I'm trying to help people bridge that gap between that in person and that technology.
Which is amazing. And you and I've had a couple conversations around that. And I mean, I don't for me it doesn't, same thing. I was always, kind of not afraid of the camera, and I was just kind of always being myself. My mom was a photographer, and we were out, doing many different kinds of things. And so, it just kind of comes naturally to be able to speak or to be on stage, even though I always say to people, even like if it really pulls you and you're scared, just be scared shitless and show up anyway. Say yes, and the rest will flow, right? Like, even if you go from the backyard to the stage. I mean, there's lots of steps in between there, but and it can get uncomfortable and it can be all these things, but in that uncomfortableness becomes that blossoming and that transformation of the journey, right?
Yeah, I mean, without some level of discomfort
Mhm.
and doing it scared, there is no growth.
Right?
There's none.
No, no. So what really inspired you to kind of, take your beautiful, amazing, vast experience and your knowledge and go kind of in your own direction and really set a beautiful stage in a beautiful place where you can really help people like myself and many others who are, stepping out in a very different way than we're used to. Instead of, like, for me, I'm going from, the 30 years of one-to-one therapy, kind of working for agencies, and in the last 5 years stepping out and going, you know what, I'm going to podcast because I want to, and I'm going to run retreats, and I'm going to do groups, and I'm going to do therapy in a whole new way. Don't know what it looks like, but I'm going to show up anyway. So what inspired you to really take your zone of genius and your gift and go do something with it?
Well, I mean, first of all, it always stems, and I think you're probably the same, and anybody that's listening or watching, if you've got something that you think can help others, then you want to broadcast that. And by broadcast, I mean literally shout it or whatever
Mhm.
format you would have done it either in the past and will do in the future. The power of on camera, so
Mhm.
video or live, and that I
Mhm.
work with people in both of those spaces, is a great way to do that. You can reach so many people that you just couldn't if it was just you traveling and welcoming people into your home or your shop or your retreat. It's the
Yeah.
ability to reach the masses and to have your message spread. So if I go beyond or even more backtrack to before it was called live selling, because
Mhm.
I do, again, I run my live selling school and I teach people to sell themselves, their products or whatever, um, through the camera. But when I started first helping people as a part of my entrepreneurship, we called it media training. So that often we'll hear that. And of course, the term media has changed over the years, but let's call it camera confidence building. Most people probably can understand what that is. And what sparked me into that was, again, working in media. I knew how to get people comfortable in a short amount of time. But I remember seeing an advertisement on the television station I worked with. And by advertisement, it was like kind of like an infomercial. So it was a real estate agent who was appearing. It was taped in front of like a green screen, and it was just him on camera. And I won't say his name just to preserve his identity because this really catapulted my entire entrepreneurship. And he wa- he just he wasn't very good. And I hate to say that because I mean it takes a lot of bravery to put yourself in
Yeah.
front of the camera. And this isn't a critique on him, but it was more a critique for me, as I say it now, on the station I worked with, because I know exactly how these conversations go. They go with somebody saying, "Hey, X station, I want to do an infomercial." And X station goes, "Great, here's the price." And that person goes on and does their infomercial, submits their script, and they basically, put a camera person there and I guess, what you would call a producer. And I only say that because of the next part of my story. And they execute this ad, and it's, whatever, 10 grand or whatever it would be, which is a lot of money for everybody. But, if you think it could bring you business, you're willing to do that, of course, right? It's an investment and you hope for a return on that investment. And I remember watching this ad and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, there's no way he's going to get business from this. It's just, he looks
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I can tell he's nervous, and it's okay to be nervous, but his discomfort on camera made me uncomfortable, and I can't imagine I'd be the only one. Like it
Yeah.
was step away, go to the bathroom kind of commercial, not the kind you're drawn to, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
we did when you had live commercials or commercials that were airing on broadcast television. And I remember talking to my colleague who was part of that. I'm going to say that part of that department. She wasn't a part of that commercial, but she's part of that department. And I remember her telling me how upset that this client of theirs, this real estate agent, was because he didn't get any leads. And so he did not have any return on that investment. And my first thing I said, and it was almost like I felt like I could rip it back in my mouth because I was pretty blunt. And I said, well, no kidding, because it was freaking awful. And I'm saying
Mm.
this internally. I would never say it to the
Yeah.
person's face, which is why I'm
No.
not saying it to you now, the name. Um, and the challenge was, or the thing that really hit home for me is he was mad at the station because he thought that the station didn't have any reach and the failure of his ad was because of the station. And
Mhm.
my thing was, well, yeah, kind of, but not for the reason he thought. It had nothing to do with the placement of the ad. It had nothing to do with anything other
Mhm.
than the fact that I think the station didn't do their part in making sure he had the very best opportunity to have a
Yeah.
great experience. And that doesn't mean it comes at for free, but what I would have loved to seen is that he would have been offered an opportunity to, hey, maybe we got a camera coach available for you. We've got someone that can kind of work through and practice with you and all of this stuff. And that could have been me, it could have been anybody. But my point is the sales team just went, oh, okay, here, thanks for there's our money. Okay, do your ad. We'll put it there and we'll just let you go. And so as a
Mhm.
result, anyways, fast forward, he never did business with the station again. And that was unfortunate because they could have had a long-term customer. He could have had a great experience and he
Mhm.
didn't. So I started media training and that's where that started. So now when we, and I still do media training, but even with my live selling school, my goal is to set people up for success. And so that's why. That's my why.
Yeah. Which is beautiful because I don't, and that goes back to the authenticity, that real and raw and radiant you, as you like to say, you're showing up as you, but you also need, as you show up as that person, you need someone to help guide you and support you and show you how to do that. Like, not everybody can do that, right? And when someone is making an investment in themselves, in their brand, their product, their business, especially of that caliber, that's a good chunk of money. You would want that to be successful, right? Not
It
only for the person, but for you as the person guiding,
100%.
right?
And I think at the time, like it probably would have cost him, a couple $100. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But to like work with someone like me or even me, right? Because
Yeah.
this was the station would have like a lot of on-air talent that could help. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
gosh, he spent 10,000 on an ad. Of course he would spend a couple $100 to have a coach. And this is why many
Yeah.
of us pay for coaches and master classes, and webinars and all of this is because don't we all just want to be better at what we do? And so yeah, I mean that's ultimately my why. And I think most great businesses and great ideas start with the idea of wanting to help somebody and wanting for someone to be the very best that they can be.
Yeah.
And I like to think that I'm doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's neat because I love, the variety of people that you can work with. Because like you said, now in the age that we are, everything is online, everything is on social media, everything is video, it's all about that. And for us, it's, okay, we got it, we have to go with this flow. We're in it. Whereas other generations that are younger than us, they're, oh yeah, that's easy. I just show up all the time.
They're born.
They're born in it.
They're digital natives.
They are.
And when,
Yeah.
you and I are talking, like, let's think of how connected we can all be through video. I mean, there is no limit. I was working with a brand on their live shopping event, and it's a skincare applicator. So it's not skincare, but it's like a tool, an
Yeah.
applicator tool. And how I met her in the first place was at a pop-up. She had traveled in from the US to a pop-up here in Vancouver, and there was a select group of, I don't know, 15 influencer slash VIPs, people basically
Yeah.
that the organizer wanted this person to meet. And I literally just did a video of this of course, these are great experiences like a retreat. How amazing to be able to be in a community and a room of people and interacting with them organically, having face to face, having a community experience. And
Yeah.
then I thought, when I worked with this brand and I said, well, we should do live shopping. And the reason being is because you can still create it's never going to be exact because you're not physically touching somebody, but you can get a pretty darn close experience virtually when you think of it as a one-to-one experience, even though
Mhm.
you're speaking one to many and
Yeah.
presenting one to many, which so I just thought it was kind of a unique thing where it's like you can take what you're already doing live in person, and if you can do that translation into that digital language,
Yeah.
you can make that experience pretty darn close and not have geography be a limit.
Well, and we're so fortunate that we're able to do the work that we do now with that not being a limit because, 20 years ago, that was a limit. And it's very interesting, and I'm very it's a very interesting path to be on, to blend all the things and come to where we are now. And like you said, I mean, you can meet in a room, but how can you take that energetic exchange and now create it like we are today, even on the podcast? We're sharing space, we're sharing energy, we're sharing inspiration, we're sharing all the things, for the bigger community, for the bigger picture. And so, how have you found that transition for people, making them feel comfortable and confident and, really self-aware? Is that something that, is the word easy is coming to me, not easy, but is there an ease and flow, or are people kind of standoffish at first and then they find themselves diving in and going, wow, what was I waiting for?
It's so funny because the first thing that people say to me once we finish the event.
Yeah.
So, right, because there's always a lot of buildup and there's nerves. And there are people,
Yeah.
even in regular television that I know, not hosts, but guests,
Yeah.
that still get a little nervous going on. But a lot of it stems from knowing your stuff and
Mhm.
practicing on camera. And my biggest tip that I have for people that sometimes feel a little bit insecure about being on camera is to treat that camera. So, I'm looking at a camera on my laptop, is to treat that camera, first of all, to know where it is, right? So it's right
Yeah.
there so that I can look you in the eye
Yeah.
and I imagine that I'm talking to Raya, which I am. But I also know that we've got however many people listening or watching,
Yeah.
right? And I know that through my conversation with Raya, I'm having conversation with so many people that you and I will never meet,
Yeah.
may never ever talk to, but that need what we have to give. And so for the businesses that I work with, how I help them work around that is I say, just
Mhm.
imagine you're speaking to a very good friend and somebody that you want to help, or you're at a dinner party, and make it feel inclusive. Right. So
Yeah.
some of that stems from too, if we talk about camera confidence, how you position
Yeah.
yourself and making sure you're open to the camera slash the person who joins the circle.
Yeah.
And that's how you keep it inclusive. And so, does it happen with a home run right out of the gate? In
Mm.
my opinion, just showing up, you've won.
Yeah.
Can we always improve? Always. I'm still watch my playback, or not the whole shows that I do, but I watch a little bit here and there. Just like I'll
Yeah.
watch this podcast or I'll listen to this podcast and I'll go, did I communicate the way I had hoped I would? Did it come across the way I wanted it to? And I
Hmm.
learn from myself. I self audit all the time. And so I encourage people, especially those that feel uncomfortable on camera, because a lot of people, first thing they say, I hate listening to myself. I hate watching myself.
Where do you think that stems from, though? Like, that comes from something deeper when people are showing up, and saying that, like,
I think it's the fear that they're showing off.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting when the second, and that's why I put my hand up so that I could get it out there. The second you said show up, I think it's that worry that by putting ourselves out there, by
Hmm.
standing on that stage
Yeah.
proud and loud and being good at what we are good at,
Yeah.
that people are going to think that we're showing off. And so what does that mean? We hear the term egotistical, right? And that's such a dirty word, but the reality is, and when I train people, I
Hmm.
say having an ego, that why is that a bad thing? We all have an ego. It's when you're egotistical that of course that is the negative connotation, but ultimately, like, why do we say our ego is bruised when someone hurts our feelings?
Hmm.
It's because we feel bruised. Our mindset, our confidence is bruised. And so ego is confidence, not to be confused with egotistical. And so, yeah, I think that when people say, I don't like watching myself, people are going to assume, well, you watch yourself. Oh, you must really like how you look. Or, oh, you must really like how awesome. No, well,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. I can admit that I'm good at some things, but the reason I'm watching is to see where could I improve, and not
Yeah.
just for me, but for everyone out there that I am hoping to spread my message to, that is hopefully watching for the right reasons to receive what I'm putting out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the word that comes to my mind is growth. When we're watching ourselves or we're listening back and, to the conversation, because often you're right in it, so that you don't always remember kind of the journey, but it's that you go back and you're watching and you're learning, and you're reflecting and you're able to go, okay, yeah, I really like that piece. I love the energy. I love the flow. And wow, but I can grow from this because I feel like there's some growth here. And, ego does have a bad name because it loves to, you've got the saboteur and you've got the ego, and they love to sit there and kind of have at, while you're doing your thing. But if you're really, I find in my work, if you're really leading from a heart centered space, and you can flip the energy of that ego into, we all have to have that to lead. And it doesn't mean, it is a stereotypical thing, but it doesn't mean it's a bad place. We can work with it in a really wonderful energy and go, yeah, I have to have a bit of ego to show up on stage because I'm scared shitless, but that ego is going to help me, you
You know
know?
what? And that's true. And I think it's also okay not to want to be up on stage or to
Yeah.
host a podcast or to dance in a recital. Like the world needs absolutely everyone. We need
Yeah.
we need the balancing. Not everybody can
Yes.
be like I'm speaking quieter in this podcast than I normally do because I'm trying to match, and I know that you can be loud and proud and energetic and all that too, but I'm usually so in your face because that's part of how I communicate.
Yeah.
But it's okay to not want to do all of that. And I think when we think about that ego and that confidence that we need, um, it is important just to not just to lead, but to live our life. We need to have a confidence to walk out a door every morning. We need to feel a purpose. We need to have all of that, and it does take confidence to do absolutely everything. And so, yeah, I mean, showing up is ultimately what it's about. And if somebody can benefit from you showing up, and I would argue that everybody has something to offer, that smile to a stranger, right? Not the creepy ones, but the person that looks
Yeah.
like, they look in your eye and the smile, and some of that's a very Canadian thing. I know there's always like the
Yeah.
nod or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's the need to be connected.
Yeah.
And I am grateful that we have technology that allows us to do that. I mean, COVID, if there's anything that there's nothing, not really anything good that came out of it other than the fact that we realized that we did not have to have limits to communication.
Yes.
We had weekly dinners with my in-laws who lived across the country. And that would have been a very lonely time for
Mhm.
certainly a senior population to
Yeah.
not be connected with kids, grandkids, all that other stuff. And now we still do Zoom dinners and cocktail
Yeah.
hour with them. And it's like we're in the same room. It's amazing what technology has allowed for us. But it's interesting because I know with you, Raya, like a lot of your experiences are very one to a community group that's
Yeah.
together in nature and in space. And I think it's important to not throw all that out either. It is important to be connected as humans. And so,
Mm.
using digital is a great complement to those in-person experiences, those coffee dates, those dinner dates, those retreats.
Yeah. It is, and it actually really does compliment. Like, I'm just kind of getting into, okay, we're doing the retreats, and afterwards, 1 to 2 weeks after the retreat, we're kind of getting back together. We're getting on Zoom. We're seeing how everybody has landed at home and how things are going, because it is a very transformational period. It you go home, you arrive one person and you go home a completely different person, and it's not always easy to integrate. So what I'm finding is that this is helping that integration. I'm able to support people in a whole other way because I can't be with every single person because they're not just from one place, right? I had a lady from Switzerland come to my last one. Well, I can't just pop on over to Switzerland and hang out with her, although I would love to. But we can stay connected with WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever, and I can send her a voice message and I can say, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, how are things going?" So the connectedness is really interesting, because it continues. So of course we thrive when we're in person because that energetic exchange is very different, but we can also have that continuum and that space. And I'm diving into what that looks like, as far as how that works with the therapeutic spaces, with the retreats, with gatherings, and making that really blend well. And I think that's what we're seeing, right? It's the blending.
Yeah, and I think, as I listen to you, it's not unlike the guy on the TV that wanted to reach more people. And then it kind of, he finished his relationship with the station. It, you know, that opportunity, if he'd had a good experience, he could have kept a relationship going. And it's not
Yeah.
exactly the same, really, you know, I'm making this sort of how it ties in. But if I think of for you, isn't it nice that there's another opportunity to keep the community? So there's business, right?
Yeah.
We all know, and listen, I would love it if we could all just share our personal genius for free and no one had to worry about paying bills and all that stuff. The reality is for us to do what we do, we have to charge. Like it's
Yeah.
not, I would love it if we didn't have to, because I think everybody deserves to have what we can offer. And there are bits and pieces that we can give them, things like podcasts and webinars and all of
Yeah.
that, of course. But I think when we offer a service built around our personal genius, there is always part of it that is transactional, like it just
Yeah.
is. And so when that transaction is finished, when that advertisement goes on air and that is finished, is that relationship done? When people go to your retreat and it's finished, is that relationship done? And it's just severed. And I think in experiential,
Yeah.
you know, what you're offering there,
Yeah.
when people feel so connected, not just with
Mhm.
themselves, but with nature, with the people,
Yeah.
it feels very harsh to have it just severed. And I
Yes.
think that's what technology in the space that you're in,
Hmm.
Raya, allows you to do. And whether it's free or at a cost or a Facebook, it doesn't matter. The point is that people can stay if they want connected. And it is that feeling of having a place in this world with
Yeah.
people that we share experiences with that makes life pretty awesome. And I think that for you to be able to continue the conversation, continue the learning, continue the transformation, to check in on people is such a gift that you can offer through virtual experiences.
Yeah. It is. It's quite fun to be able to see how that grows and transforms because, even the work that you've done, where you came from and where you are, there's so much transformation and growth and change because the world has done that. And I feel like, when I even work one to one with somebody, having that deep connection and that continued relationship as it evolves. I might work with somebody for a full year and after that they're done, or maybe it's 3 months or whatever it is. As that container completes, there's other places for them to be. Whether you said, like you said, listening to the podcast, they're like, hey, I want to listen weekly to Raya's podcast. She's got some cool guests that come on. Maybe I'm going to learn something, or they can stay connected. Just sometimes just hearing someone's voice. I have my favorite podcasts I listen to all the time, and I keep adding new ones and all kinds of things. Why? Because it makes me feel connected. It makes me feel like, hey, I'm learning something and I'm growing and I'm in a community,
Yeah. I
you
think that
know?
what's interesting too is the people that have, and so again, I'll relate it even to my business. I did a podcast the other day, and this person, his regular day job is he's like a chartered accountant, and he's doing a podcast that has nothing to do with accounting. And
Yeah.
he interviewed me about my business. And first of all, he had the most awesome voice. Like, I'm like, please tell me you're appearing on media in your world of accounting to give like tax tips and all that stuff because like I just said you're just so good, and on top of that you're this awesome interviewer. So
Yeah.
through technology and through a podcast, he's tapping into a completely different zone of genius. Like he's not a professional he's not making money on podcasting. He's doing
No.
this first of all because he just really wants to,
Yeah.
and he's filling something within himself. And so when I
Yeah.
look at my live selling school, for instance, and working with brands in particular, I mean, I work with brands that also have a brick and mortar, but let's go to the direct to consumer, where essentially their brand lives on a website. And there might be like an about me section that says, you know, here's the founder of the brand and here's their origin story and blah, 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 and all this stuff, which is great. That's pretty cookie cutter, but it's also very important, right? But you're
Yeah.
essentially, it's a very faceless experience.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I love about what I do is it takes all of that camera confidence building, sharing your key messages and all that, but doing it as a conduit toward helping people get to know you and ultimately your product. And then hopefully, again, that funnels into the support of your product, AKA sales.
Yeah.
And I always love when I work with a founder who realizes, oh my gosh, first of all, I never thought I'd ever get to just tell my story or to physically show someone how to use my products. And whether that is with live shopping or in social media. And social media, by the way, can be shoppable.
Yeah.
And it ultimately is. If someone sees a video of you doing a makeup tutorial or how to use your product or a get ready with me, and you happen to sell products on a website, the very nature that you're putting yourself as a brand founder on camera is always going to funnel to where your business is. And how fortunate we are to be able to have that opportunity. I mean, that
Hmm.
never existed
No.
before. And it, to me, one of the reasons I love seeing founders and people go on video, and even if you are, your main bread and butter is your in-person experiences, like your retreats, for instance, putting yourself on camera exposes you to so many more people. And it sets you apart from the other people that might be working and living and providing services or products within your space or your niche. So
Yeah.
the power of being on camera in whatever way that is you can't dispute it. You just cannot dispute it. For instance, if there was someone else, there isn't anybody offering what I do specifically because of what
Yeah.
I do, but let's say there were, and all they did was have a static website page and
Yeah.
no video. And you're going
Yeah.
to look, someone's going to go search, okay, who can help me with XXXXX? Not sex, but XXX. I realize that's how it sounded with you because of the way it all smushes together.
Yeah.
But if you have the two side by side,
Hmm.
you're going to go with Dawn, who is first of all able to share
Yeah.
why I'm teaching this is because I feel I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at being it. And yes, there are qualities that I bring to the table that are innately me, right? I can't,
Yeah.
there's certain things I can't teach. But what I can do is help you do your version of this. And you would only know that that I can help you is through that a bit of that aspirational experience, which a static page can't do. So the same
No.
goes for I'm a product. Dawn Chubai is a brand. Dawn Chubai is a product, right? I don't
Yeah.
have a physical product. I have a digital product, and I have what I can coach and teach. And you would be the same,
Yeah.
Raya, right? So if there is another person offering a retreat and all they have is a website, and yet Raya is very good on social media, maybe does the odd webinar, people listen to her podcast. Now we know Raya or
Hmm.
anyone listening. Now we know you.
Yeah.
Now we can get attached to you. Now we can get to know you. Now we can trust you, which for
Yes.
anybody that's given up $1 or $1 million,
Hmm.
you got to trust. And there's to be able to also decide if that person is aligned with how you want to do things. Like if
Yes.
somebody is a super quiet person and they never want to put themselves out there, I might not be the right person for them. But if they
Yeah.
are looking to step out of the box a little bit, doesn't have to be live selling, but to just be a little bit more confident on stage or in that Zoom meeting or
Hmm.
presenting to your colleagues,
Yeah.
right? In a staff meeting,
Yeah.
that's what I can help with. And I think that you would never know that if you didn't meet me.
Right. And that's, and then it goes back to even just that discovery. So someone's looking up someone, they find you, they're like, man, I want to know more. So what you and I and many in our varied fields do is we offer that discovery, that place for people to book that time to go, man, I was really intrigued. I love the energy. I feel aligned. Let's meet with that person for like that half an hour that they offer because I want to know more. And I mean, you and I did that. We went a little past our time because we were like talking about all kinds of great things. But I remember in that conversation, we started talking about all kinds of really great things. You gave me super amazing inspiration. We started talking about people's heavy loads and, dragging that little radial flyer wagon with everything spilling out, or that red backpack that's so heavy and it's just like you've been carrying the weight of the world for so long. And so, just in our short conversations that we had, you're like, hey, like show up and try this, like show people how to unpack it, show people how to, take the things out of that wagon, be playful, be silly, be fun, show up in a way that is going to make it, relatable and understandable. You know what it's like to carry that load and to drag it along. So why not show people what it's like to slowly start to unpack that? And I remember sitting in my greenhouse with my collection of rocks because I have an awful lot of rocks and not a lot of plants in my greenhouse. But I'm sitting in there. I had my daughter's backpack and I shoved journals and books and like all kinds of things. I'm like, geez, there's like all these journals I've probably written on a few pages because, there was something I needed to get down, and all these books that I've read half of and I just haven't had time to go back, or I got what I needed. And I thought, how fun. I get to sit there and I'm sitting with my rocks and kind of joking about we're going to have, this coffee hour with Raya and her greenhouse and her rocks and unpacking all this stuff. And it was just really fun to play with that idea. And I think what you encourage is almost it's getting people in touch with that playfulness and that curiosity and that sense of wonder, which I love doing in my way too. So that really resonated with me because I'm like, yeah, I don't have to be all serious about this. I can be like super fun and playful and silly, and that helps to break those barriers down for people to go, "Oh my gosh, she's like super real." I don't know how not to be real anyway, but I'm barefoot, I'm outside, I'm being goofy, I'm like doing all the things. And even was it yesterday, I have um the Jenga, but like yard size Jenga with made with 2x4s, and it's in this box outside and it's been sitting out all winter. So I'm like, I don't think that box is very strong anymore. But anyways, so I put my camera up and I'm like, this is like a big heavy load that people have to carry, this big heavy box. And I'm going to grab it and start walking with it. And it just fell apart, which was perfect. I didn't even plan it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what happens when the load overflows. And I laughed, and it was, just super off the cuff, but yet, super playful. And I'm like, yeah, it's getting back in touch with that piece, because in order for us to do our work, whether it's you training people or me having a retreat or one to one, that those other versions of us, it's that, that it goes back to childhood, those playful pieces. If we can thread them forward into what we're doing, we're creating a very unique space, I think.
And it's also reaching people in a different way.
Hmm.
So when I say language, right now, everybody, I'm going to assume that's watching or listening speaks and understands English, and to varying
Yeah.
degrees, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, when you are showcasing everything kind of falling apart or
Yeah.
overflowing or whatever is wheels coming off of the wagon, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you're tapping in to a different way of communicating. It's a different language.
Yeah.
So if somebody were watching that video
Yeah.
and had it on mute, they're going to get a few things out of it. They're going to go, okay, this is a viral TikTok, ha ha ha, right? Fun. Everyone's going
Hmm.
to, start copying it, and that's fine. But there will be somebody that for whatever reason, based on probably what they're going through in life,
Hmm.
they are going to interpret it in a deeper way, which is part of how you're trying to show something visually that
Yeah.
is not typically seen from the
Yeah.
outside, right?
No.
Like when you walk by someone on the street, and we always say you never know what someone's going through. Like for all you know, that their wagon was overflowing, their backpack was overflowing, and that's why they reacted a certain way. That's why something happened.
Yeah.
And I think the idea that you're communicating with people in different ways is smart, and it challenges you as well, because we also, especially if we've been doing things the same way for so long, like for instance, even this podcast, right? I've approached, because of the nature of you and your podcast, this is different than a typical business podcast that I would do,
Yeah.
and that's good, because
Yeah.
this is challenging me not to be sell, sell, sell. Let me tell you about everything, which is great. Like, I mean, and I have ways of doing it that is never super hard sell anyway, but it's
Yeah.
typically like a little of a different podcast. I would say, this podcast for me has challenged me
Yeah.
in different ways. And I
Well,
think it's great
yeah.
to learn how to communicate differently. So for me, I have no problem with communicating differently visually. That's what I do. I sell things on
Yeah.
screen, I communicate on camera, I have ways of describing fabrics that make you feel like you're touching them yourselves. But for me to communicate in this way on this podcast, this is a stretch for me. This is a growth for me. And for
Yeah.
you, perhaps translating things in a visual, fun way, because it is fun. We make it sound
Yes.
serious in planning these things, but it is supposed to be fun,
Right.
is challenging you.
Right. And I think that, that's what I really did take away from that conversation was, here, I'm going to challenge you. Like, you have a playful side, you have this personality, go play with it, go explore it, go do the things that you already do, but do it in a different way and just see how it feels. Do it 100 times, do it 5 times, whatever. And you get to know yourself and learn more about yourself and feel what feels comfortable. Face the stuff that doesn't feel comfortable, because in all reality, everyone I work with is also going to go through those things. They're going to show up, they're going to be uncomfortable, they're going to be stressed out, they're going to be burnt out, they're going to be all these things. They're going to hit that crossroads and go, now what? Where do I go? Even when, they're meeting you for the first time, they're going, I have tried everything. I don't even know what to do anymore. I've tried it all. And Dawn, I resonate. I need help. Like, I don't know how to ask for help, but here I am. I'm showing up, right? And I think that's, we're kind of creating that space today for people to go, yeah, Dawn's a real human being. I mean, sure, she's got this amazing background, but there's no intimidation. There's this open conversation, this beautiful, sacred, safe space, this very empowering and inspiring space for someone to show up authentically and just say, hey, um, can you help me? This is what I do, right? And it's a huge, like, creating that space for someone is so important for people to walk through that door.
And everybody's version of growth is different. For some,
Mhm.
they want to climb atop of a mountain, and for them, that's the goal. For
Yeah.
some, it's I want to feel comfortable speaking at a staff meeting, or
Yeah.
I'm doing a TED talk, or I'm starting a podcast,
Yeah.
or I'm stepping out of my home for the first time in 5 years, or going to the gym for the first time ever.
Yeah.
So, for many of us, we often can be intimidating, I think, to people if we've
Yeah.
achieved something that isn't even what people want to do. Like if people work with me, I think there might be people that go, "Well, I don't want to be on TV. I'm not looking to be on stage or sing with the orchestra or record CDs because I've done all that, right?" And
Yeah.
like how can like is Dawn going to expect that of me? Or for when people go to a retreat, I imagine too, it's like, well, what does Raya expect of me? Because I don't know
Mhm.
if I can do that. What does Dawn expect from me out of this? Not what can Dawn do to help me get to where I want to go, but what is
Yeah.
Dawn like almost like I'd be disappointed if I didn't see them on a TED Talk. No, I'm not working with you to that. I'm working with you. How do you light yourself so you look good on Zoom? I'm working with you. How do you speak to um, a group of people in a confident way? For instance, I
Mhm.
worked with a group that so it's a community organization with people that have English as a second language, and they're mostly in the Latin community, and everyone speaks English, but they
Mhm.
don't feel confident sometimes in the workplace or on stage because they worry
Yeah.
that people are judging them if their
Mhm.
grammar's not correct or whatever. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, you speak way more languages than I do, so good on you for, you
Yeah.
know, doing something new. And then to stand on stage or in front of your colleagues, like that has to be stressful.
Yeah.
And so when I work with any group, and in particular this group, I wanted to be very mindful that not everybody is dying to host a television show or all of that. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to do? And so I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that they understood that your goal is that's your mountain, and you're here to help you get to that mountain or close to the peak.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be very mindful of that. And when we finished, everybody did speak kind of at the end of it. They
Mhm.
each had like a 5-minute speech, and it was to teach them how to write a speech and essentially present it. And everybody did such a great job. And I
Mhm.
think it was once we let go of the fact that no, you don't have to be perfect. Don't worry about the grammar. It's like anything, it's content, right? So
Yeah.
when you sit there and do your content on social media, or when I work with brands to either present themselves on camera, whether it's media, Zoom calls, or live selling,
Mhm.
it's let's figure out what you're trying to accomplish. And when you can do that confidently, like you've already won. Do we worry that once in a while Dawn says an or Raya says an ah? People always say, oh, we got to get rid of the ums and the ahs. Yeah, I mean, it's ideal that you're not doing it as a filler word, but
Yeah.
the first thing I say to people is, I'm not going to overly critique every time you said an and an ah. If it's a crutch or if you're doing these things as a crutch, I'm going to try to make sure you can help navigate a way through that. But
Yes.
no, we're not gonna start docking points because you didn't use proper English all the time, especially
Yeah.
if what you're trying to do is present yourself authentically and you're trying to give great information. So I think it
Yeah.
was very empowering for this group to just feel like what they had to offer was enough, but also applaud them for wanting to also find the best version of themselves and to be
Hmm.
able to do it in the best way they can. Not that Dawn can, not that Rye can, but that they
Yeah.
can to go
Yeah.
where their top of the mountain is.
Yeah. I love that you use the mountain. I use it all the time too, because when people come to me for healing or the retreats, we all look at these beautiful mountains. We're like, man, like, geez, to get to the top of that, like that is, and you don't do that in one step. It's a journey. It's one step at a time. And it can be windy, it can be bumpy, it can be hanging on to a rope to get to the next spot. Like and each part of that mountain is something different. It's a new skill, it's a new learning, you're uncovering all kinds of things before you get to the peak, to where you get to look out over the vastness and explore what that is even, right? So and I look at that when I'm, taking people on that journey of rediscovering who they are and reconnecting back to themselves, to their heart, to their soul, to who they are, who they want to be, who they are in the moment, where they're going. And it's really beautiful because it's such a sturdy, strong connection, because we always look at the mountains that hold us with such strength and resilience. They have quite a story of, getting to how they came to be over millions of years ago, right? So it's very interesting too, because I think in some systems it's easy if if you have I go to I have dyslexia and ADHD. So I was always told that I would never be able to speak, I would never graduate, I would never be able to write a book or do this or do da 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 da. And I'm like, huh. And then my dad on the other side, he's going like, yeah, but there's no such word as I can't. And I'm like, okay, this institution is telling me I can't. You're telling me this. Where do I find my authentic way and how I get to do it for me? Because it's not going to look the same as it would for someone else. So, I spent a lot of my life, I had a lot of influences all through school that really tried to kind of keep pushing me down, pushing me down. And now I find myself loving podcasting, because why not? I have no idea even how I got there. I just decided one day I was going to do it 3 years ago, and I slowly started dabbling. And now I'm like, I just want to go. I love it. I want to go, 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 because I get to meet really cool people, and I get to also grow and change and evolve myself. And then even with publishing, I mean, both my parents are published authors, traveled the world, like all kinds of things. I'm like, how do I do that? Like, I can't, I'm not that smart. And I landed in a couple places that were so empowering, and the communities were so supportive, and we're all different levels of, geniuses and gifts and authenticities and all these things and stories, and the support and the camaraderie of people coming together was so life changing for me. Like I just organically landed in three different places, and I've had three different publishings, and I'm like, who would have thought? And so I feel like, when you're working with people, because everybody has their own story, you're empowering them one step at a time to go, you got this, you can so do this, but it's unique to you. It's not my way or John's way or Jill's way, it's your way.
Well, when you said who would have thought, it wouldn't have been possible if you didn't think it.
I know, right?
So the thinking it, regardless
Hmm.
of whether you think you can do it or not at that moment, because of all whatever we call limiting beliefs and all of those things.
Hmm.
But if you hadn't thought it, then it would not have been a who would have thought. You
Right.
thought, you thought.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're all aspirational to somebody.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, especially because my world is so front facing, right?
Hmm.
on TV and stuff. There's a lot of people that, they see me, and so and they totally can hate me and they cannot like me for whatever reason. That's fine. But there are people that go, oh, I like Dawn because they see me. And
Yeah.
there's elements of maybe what I do or say that might be considered motivational or aspirational or whatever. But that's only because I'm on camera. Like, otherwise, no one would know who I was, right? Other than my
Yeah.
circle. And even in my circle, there would be people that probably say, oh, Dawn is so motivational. She's such a great cheerleader or whatever. Like, that's what I hope
Yeah.
people are saying about me. That I do
Yeah.
believe that about myself. But I
Yeah.
do hope I hope that's what people say about me.
Yeah.
But everybody has somebody in their life who is looking up to them.
Hmm.
It could be your kids, it could be your friend, it could be, if you've got a great sense of style. Like, it doesn't even have to be that deep. You got a great sense of style. You're walking down New York and there's somebody looking, going, man, that lady's got great style. Right. Or
Hmm.
that person, wow, look at the swagger. Or look at,
Yeah.
oh, wow, isn't that like that couple? They just look so happy.
Yeah.
Right. So, whatever it is, we are that for someone else. And I think
Yes.
it's important to know that, especially as we all look to, like, what are we doing? Are we trying to improve ourselves, or we're trying, whatever it might be, or we're feeling
Hmm.
down on ourselves? I think it's important to go, like, we are somebody's treasure.
Yeah.
And so even when we feel like we're trash, we are somebody's treasure.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's beautiful because, you know, that treasure, we get to hold that mirror up, and we get to have mirrors held up for us and get to be reminded of that, and maybe in somebody's darkest day, they're going, oh, Dawn's energy, she just lifted me up. There's that treasure piece, that little thread, that little piece that you're sharing out there with the world. So if you are, people are out there and they're going like, I really want to get better at this. I don't know. I kind of listen to the podcast, but what would be something, that maybe you could open up that space for someone who, is just sitting there and they're really scared, but they know it's their next move, and they want to explore that. What would advice would you give them, and kind of moving forward with the next steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, identifying that you want to grow in a certain space is great. And maybe today you listened, you watched, or whatever, and you thought, gosh, maybe I should get a little more comfortable speaking up or talking to a group of people.
Yeah.
We'll do the kind of, here's what you can do on your own. Just start doing it. And even if it starts with you propping up your phone and pretending it's a group of people, because that's really what I work with, is like the idea of that you're working through a screen to people you've never
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
But you can also do that as a practice for yourself if you're getting ready to speak, at a staff meeting or whatever. Just tape yourself so that you see what other people are going to see,
Yes.
and then watch it back, and be kind to yourself, but also be a little bit critical. And by critical, I mean self audit. I don't mean criticize,
Yeah.
but you don't grow if you're not self critiquing. You're not. You
Yes.
can't. We're not all a finished state. And then I would say, if you feel that you can benefit from some other guidance, then absolutely, like, reach out to, if you have somebody in your life that can help you with that, then reach out to them, because you're going to trust them and you're going to feel comfortable with them. If you've listened or watched this podcast and you think, well, gosh, I think I'd be comfortable with Dawn, then
Mhm.
reach out to me. And it's very simple to reach out to me. We can have a bit of a discovery call just to make sure we're a fit, and so that I can also understand what it is you're looking for, and then I
Yeah.
can make sure that I can give you what you need.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'd like to think that I have pretty big scope, so there's probably a way that I can help you, but I want to make sure that I manage what your expectation is of what you're
Mhm.
going to get from me. I'm not looking to just, like, you know, get a bunch of people, on my calendar. Like, that's not
Yeah.
success for me. It's like, my
No.
goal is to help you have a transformation, of which is what most of us want to do.
Yeah.
And you can, and yeah, people can do that. I'd love for anybody that's listening and wants some help presenting their best selves or their products, to
Yeah.
reach out to me, and they can do that via dawnchubay.com is probably the easiest way to do that. And of course, I'm on all social media as well.
Yeah. Perfect. I'll share all that information for everybody too. If you were to think of who was your biggest inspiration, you gave your mom for when you're kind of growing up. Is there anyone else that really stands out that just inspired you to step out into, the world doing all the things that you've done?
So it's I mean, both of my parents were very supportive. I mean, and by the way, they're
Mhm,
both around, so I'm making it sound like they're not with us anymore. But and in particular, my dad.
mhm,
Um, I probably got a bit of the sales bug and the presentation bug. My dad was, I think, you know, not the most comfortable speaker when he was younger, but he did Dale Carnegie. And when we were driving to school, he had the cassette tapes because it was cassettes back then
yep,
of Zig Ziglar and public speaking and, and Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. And so it seems really, really cliche to say my parents, but I didn't really have any mentors per
mhm,
se in the space that I'm in. Because again, I was quite shy in school. I was not a good student. I barely graduated. I didn't go to college or university, or I mean, everything I've done because I had somebody that said, "You'd probably be good at this," and then I would go and ultimately be good at it, which was great because it meant someone
yeah,
saw something in me, and
yeah,
and then it almost gave me that validation and that permission. And I was told once that everything is trainable except for personality. And so keeping my
mhm,
personality was is my strong suit. And so I was
yes,
able to learn to be on TV and learn to sell things, leveraging my personality. For other people,
yeah,
they're who they are is maybe it's not personality. That's okay. Maybe they're really good with numbers and that's what their secret sauce is, and that's fine.
yeah,
But I don't really have anybody like I can't really say I have someone like famous or somebody that anybody would know. I would just say I've always tried to surround myself with people that believed in possibility
mhm,
and didn't think that you had to have a specific qualification to be good at something, if that makes sense.
yeah, it makes that hits home a lot with me, it makes a lot of sense, and I think that'll hit home with a lot of people, you know, and we think we have to have, all these big influencers, or we have to go off and get, our masters and PhDs and all these kinds of things. I know in my field, in the therapy field, it's big for people, like, it's the big push to go and continue, and, you feel like it validates who you are, but it doesn't. Like you said, it's your heart, your personality, what you bring to the table, or whatever little gift that you have, and growing that. I mean, having your parents as inspiration, that's amazing. Not everybody can say that, and they are our biggest inspiration in many ways, and they help to open those doors and kind of pave that path for us to discover who we are.
Yeah, and for some, it's not necessarily
Oh,
always
oh,
inspiration, but they
no.
absolutely influence.
Yep,
Your parents are your biggest influence, and so that's
yep,
for the better, but it also can be for some people the worst.
yep,
So how you interpret your life experience, especially growing up, sometimes it's the I don't want to do
yep,
that and what I experienced as your motivator for growth.
yeah,
And there's no wrong way. It's just
no,
this is our life and this is what we're given, and what we choose to do with those experiences, for better or for worse,
yep,
is up to us. And we get kind of one shot. We get
yep,
many, many shots in our life. And so, you're never a finished product, in my
no,
opinion, but we do have only this one life or a version of this life. And then, whatever happens after that, everyone's got different perspectives on that.
yeah,
But in this particular life,
yep.
we got, that's what we got. So we might as well try all the possibilities.
And why not? Like, and we're more so in a world now where people are not staying in one career for 40 years or 35 years or whatever, where you're seeing people try so many things because everyone's so much more open to that now. And I think that's actually really cool because there's so many different parts of us and pieces of us that we're nurturing when we're doing that. So, oh, what an amazing conversation. And thank you for being vulnerable and like going along with me in my intuitive way of leading. It is really fun to get to know you and just have that conversation for people to know, just that down to earth space that I love to share and that you hold for people. And I think that yeah, I'm just honored. It's such a gift. So I'm grateful for your time and your knowledge and just your sharing. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Again, I grew a lot today in the conversation with
Yeah,
you, and it takes a new perspective um, for me to carry as well, and gives me a new perspective. So thank you for that, Raya.
it was awesome. Awesome, awesome.